اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى سيدنا محمد وآله وصحبه وسلم. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله العظيم. سبحان الله بحمده سبحان الله العظيم. يا الله. So inshallah today we will continue with the advices of the Prophet. Today's topic is very important. It has to do with something that we talk about all time, about nifaq and munafiqat and munafiq. It's a very important hadith and very important concept to understand. अब्दुल्ला इब्न अमर बयान करते हैं कि रसूलुल्लाह सल्लल्लाहु अलैहि वसल्लम ने फरमाया, जिस शख्स में ये 4 खसलतें हो वो खालिस मुनाफिक है, और जिसमें इनमें से एक खसलत हो तो उसमें निफाक की एक खसलत है, हत्ता कि वो उसे छोड़ दे। जब उसके पास अमानत रखी जाए तो उसमें खयानत करे, जब बात करे तो झूठ बोले, जब अहद करे तो अहद शिकनी करे, और जब झगड़ा करे तो गाली गलौज पर उतर आए। Abdullah ibn Amr radiallahu anhu narrated, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, 4 are the qualities which when found in a person make him a sheer hypocrite, and one who possesses one of them possesses one characteristic of hypocrisy until he abandons that behavior. These are, when he is entrusted with something, he betrays the trust. When he speaks, he lies. When he promises, he acts unfaithfully. And when he argues, he behaves in a very imprudent, insulting manner. In the time of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, there were 3 groups of people. There were believers, there were rejectors, and there were munafiqeen. And those were easily identified because of their apparent behavior. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has explained the traits of these people, the 3rd category of people, munafiqeen, in Surah Baqarah, in the 2nd ruku. I'm just going to read those verses. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. ومن الناس من يقول آمنا بالله وباليوم الآخر وما هم بمؤمنين يخادعون الله والذين آمنوا وما يخدعون إلا أنفسهم وما يشعرون في قلوبهم مرض فزادهم الله مرضا وهم عذاب أليم بما كانوا يكذبون وإذا قيل لهم لا تفسدوا في الأرض قالوا إنما نحن مصلحون ألا إنهم هم المفسدون ولكن لا يشعرون وإذا قيل لهم آمنوا كما آمن الناس قالوا أن نؤمن كما آمن السفهاء ألا إنهم هم السفهاء ولكن لا يعلمون وإذا لقوا الذين آمنوا قالوا آمنا وإذا خلوا إلى شياطينهم قالوا إنا معكم إنما نحن مستهزئون. Translation: Among the people are those who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. They seek to deceive Allah and those who believe, but they deceive none but themselves, though they are not aware of it. In their heart is a sickness, and Allah has increased their sickness. They will have a painful punishment because of their denial and their lies. And when it is said to them, do not make trouble on the earth, they say, we are only reformers. In fact, they are the troublemakers, but they are not aware of it. And when it is said to them, believe as the people have believed, they say, shall we believe as the fools have believed? In fact, it is they who are the fools, but they do not know. And when they come across those who believe, they say, oh, we believe. But when they are alone with their devils, they say, oh, we are with you. We were just mocking with them. This is a very clear explanation of what was a munafiq at that time. And for a very long time, that was the definition of munafiq, and those were the traits of a munafiq. But unfortunately, what happened was that as the time went on, and the iman of the believers started to decrease, they were not, if they started to be not loyal to the Sharia and to the codes and commands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as their predecessors were. Although they still believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they still believed in the Prophet, they still believed in the books, they still believed in the Day of Judgment, but in their behavior, what they preached, they did not follow. And those are the things that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has mentioned in this verse. So then there was a need for the ulama of the time to differentiate between the clear munafiqeen of the first kind and the second type of munafiqeen that came about much later in the ummah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So they divided the nifaq into two categories. They said that the first nifaq is the nifaq of beliefs. When a person actually does not believe but pretends to believe. उर्दू में इसको कहते हैं निफाक एतकादी. They don't have this faith, but they pretend to have faith. And they pretend to have faith for one simple reason: to save them from any harm that may come to them, and to seek the protection of those who were in that majority of non-believers and rejectors. So they wanted to sort of play both sides. But as I mentioned, the time went on. People's faith, iman, and people's following and living by their faith started to decrease. And this kind of hypocrisy, which was not of the belief system, but their character and their trait, how they behaved, how they conducted themselves, that there was nifaq in that. And that was called nifaq amali, the hypocrisy in the practice and deeds. So those categories came about much later, so that people can differentiate between two different kinds of nifaq. A person who is engaged in nifaq amali, there is hypocrisy of the deeds, hypocrisy of the practice, will not be called a munafiq or a kafir of the first kind. See, that the first categories of munafiqeen, Allah mentioned in the Quran and we find in the Hadith, that their punishment in the Day of Judgment will be worse than those of kafirin. They will be in the lowest possible, most severest part of the hell, even below the kafirin. Because they were trying to cheat Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as well, and cheat the Muslimin. The kafirin they were openly rejectors. They were not cheating anybody. But they were cheating, and through their cheating, they were harming the believers. By siding with the kafirin, with the rejectors, and providing them information, spying for them, etc., fighting with them. So those will be punished big time, severely. However, the munafiqeen of practice, the munafiqeen of deed, who have nifaq in their daily life behaviors, and those four things that are described in this hadith are about this second category of nifaq, not the first category. Because, For a Muslim, for a true believer, to engage into that kind of behavior is unimaginable. It's only when your iman is weakened, then you will engage in those behaviors. So a person may be lying, may be breaking his promises, may be untrustworthy in their amanas, in their trust, may be rude and insulting, talking to people in insulting manners. He still would be a Muslim, but he's committing major sins. And for those sins, he will be punished. For those sins, he will be punished. But when somebody calls them a munafiq, then you need to differentiate between the two. Because the first kind of munafiq is worse than kufr. And the second type of munafiq is basically character issues that leads people into sins. However, if a person engages into those behavior and makes it jais, now the i'tiqad is gone. It's very important to understand. If a person lies and persistently lies and says, everybody does it, we can't do without it anymore. Because we can't do it anymore without it, therefore we won't be punished about it anymore. Because Allah says that we can't do without it. Now they are very close to crossing the line of the nifaq amali to nifaq i'tiqadi, which is what we have to worry about. Which is why I picked this topic for today. Because there's lots of these people who are just about that line and they don't realize it. As soon as we begin to say, well, I do it and I know I do it, but everybody does it. And we have to reinterpret these things now in the light of the current situation. Now you're gone. You're now into nifaq i'tiqadi. And this is the most dangerous thing. And this is commonplace these days when our educated and uneducated people from all walks of life begin to question the conduct of Islam, the character of Islam, and they say it's not possible to do it anymore. Please understand, I'm being very serious. As soon as we say this is not possible to do now, you blamed Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for saying in the Quran that today I have completed your faith. There's nothing better for you than this, and I will protect it. And this will be practicable anywhere on the earth at any time. You accuse Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that He, astaghfirullah, did not know what was going to come. This is a very difficult situation. This is a very dangerous situation. And subhanAllah, may Allah forgive us and may Allah protect us all. Lots of people are getting into this without realizing it. Like this young person says, well, if I cannot get the loan from the bank on the interest, then I can't follow this because it's impossible to survive and do business anymore without interest. Well, that means that now following Islam is not possible. Living by the rule of Islam is not possible. And you challenge Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, who said it will be possible until people are on this earth and everywhere on this earth. It may be difficult, yes, but it will be possible. And people around who are committed to these live by those rules, and Allah makes it possible for them. And those who don't want to find it always difficult. So then this hadith is about those four things. Now, the hadith refers to this second category of nifaq, as I said. What are the four characteristics that Allah mentioned? When he's entrusted with something, he betrays that trust. भाई ये कहने को तो बात आसान है कि जब आपके पास अमानत रखी जाती है तो खयानत करता है. And we say, well, no, I don't do this. I mean, if somebody puts something, gives something to me in trust, I will give back to him. I'll keep that trust. I'll protect this thing. But in our daily life, may Allah forgive us. Many of us, for example, betray these trusts all the time. I'm going to give you some examples. Those of us who work in offices, who are employees, and the employer provides us an office space and devices and stationery and all the things that we need. For what? For use, for fulfilling your obligation, your duties to that job. But how many people, without ever thinking, take those devices, take those stationeries, take those pens and bring them home? It's not uncommon. It's very common because we don't think of it. We don't think of it as such, that this is breaking the trust that somebody has placed on us. We are supposed to be abiding by the law of the land. When we came to this country, we applied for citizenship. At the citizenship hearings and before, we took the oath of abiding by the law of this country. Am I right? Ulama say that unless some law is asking you to do something against your faith, you must abide by that law. If you don't, तो तुमने अमानत में खयानत, because that was in trust. You gave your trust to them that I will abide by your law. So as long as the law is not against your faith and what you say your faith requires you to do, you are required to obey that law. We take, for example, borrow things from people, from friends. Forget about it, never give them back. It's not uncommon. Somebody comes to me and says, oh, you have so many books, can I borrow a book? And I'm very reluctant. I'm very reluctant because I don't know if it's going to come back or not. And we don't do it intentionally, but we just don't think that if you borrowed something from somebody, it is an amana to you. You have to not only use it, but use it properly and take care of it and protect it and return it. Bhai, some of our pious predecessors, when you read the stories of them, and you see how careful, how meticulous, and how careful they were about this khayanat part. I'm going to give you a couple of examples. Some of our scholars, Maulana Rashim Gangohi Sahib Rahmatullah Alayhi, and many others, they were hired by the madrasa, by the Darul Uloom, to teach hadith and Quran and whatever else they thought. And they were provided classrooms, and they were provided a sort of dari to sit on, a form or whatever, something to sit on a carpet and teach. If in the majlis, some private person came to talk privately to the Maulana, he will not sit on that carpet to talk to him. He will walk away and not use that place which he was entrusted. This is for the use for the madrasa. will not use it for his own purpose to talk, just talk for a few minutes to somebody who is not related to his work. When they were going to make some notes for themselves, a private note, they would not use the pen of the madrasa. And when chanda was given to them, charity was given to them for the masjid, every penny they would account for. Every single penny. That this is given to us in amana, in trust. We have to make sure that this is not abused. And I don't end up using it for myself without even realizing it. और आज देखो चंदों का क्या हाल है. Organizations collect millions of dollars in the name of masajid, madaris, all kinds of things. And just look at what kind of care is taken in managing that money. All of this falls into betraying the trust. Same thing goes for the lies. Often, when a person lies intentionally, he knows he's lying. Right? Sometimes we justify it and say, no, I'm not lying, but this is how I see it. This is also a way of going around about lying. I'm not lying, but this is how I see it. But they know they're lying. But then, often we lie and we don't even know that we're lying. If a person, for example, in jokingly makes up something about somebody, it's not true. And says when he's called upon, he says, "Oh, मैं तो मजाक कर रहा था. I was just joking." And there are many, many, many examples of this, that people would lie. Husbands and wives would lie to each other, and they would justify it, or they would not even know that they're lying, that this is really a lie. I should not be saying this to my husband or my wife. Children lie to their parents, justifying it, or not realizing that they're lying. These types of behaviors are so common. We make promises. This is very important. If you say, I promise that I would do this, and if you're in your heart, you say, chalo keh diya hai yaar, Allah ka hukum hoga kar lunga. Then you're breaking your promise already. You say, I'm going to be there, and you're not there. You broke your promise. And then, without realizing that you broke your promise, you say, bhai main nahi aa saka yaar. Ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya, ye ho gaya, wo ho gaya. Something happened and I couldn't come. Well, that's okay, something could have happened. But for your promise, you were obligated to tell the person, I will not be able to make it today because this is happening. Ye kaun karta hai bhai? So, these types of behaviors are very, very commonplace, unfortunately. And we don't realize it, that we are engaged into it. About arguing, people do differ. People will have difference of opinions. It's not possible not to have differences of opinions. But people go to the point where they become rude, they become, they talk harshly, and they swear, and they go into all kinds of things. Can't talk peacefully. There's going to be a difference of argument, so what? We talk about it. You don't have to get nasty. You don't have to get rude and disrespectful. These are all the signs of nifaq. And as I told you, There's a very thin line between the second category of nifaq, which is mainly related to a behavior, and the first category of nifaq, where your i'tiqad, your belief is changed. There's a very, very small line there, which is why we have to be extremely careful of what we say. भाई इसीलिए कहा जाता है कि पहले सोचो फिर बोलो, जबान को संभालो, पहले सोचो फिर बोलो. Understand the consequences. And often we use this tongue without ever thinking what will be the consequence of this. People lie and cheat and justify it. I was just dealing with the case. This woman, they're going through some marital problems. And the husband is now threatening to leave her and go. And when she checked into what's happening with her, he had forced her signature to clear out her bank account. Does he feel bad about it? Does he feel guilty about it? I'm sure that if he held any sense of guilt, he would not have done it. Somehow he's justifying it to himself. But nevertheless, if he's justifying it or not justifying it, he's committing a major sin. If the aqidah that I'm going to be held accountable to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, देखो अकायद तो बहुत से हैं. There's an aqidah about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that there's a God and He is one God. There's aqidah about prophets of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's aqaids about the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the angels, but there's also an aqidah about Day of Judgment and accountability, am I right? We have to know that there's going to be a Day of Judgment and there's going to be a Day of accountability. I will be held accountable. If that aqidah is gone, I believe in Allah, I believe in His prophets, I believe in the angels, the books of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I believe in the Day of Judgment, but Allah is merciful. Allah is merciful. Allah is forgiving. Or Allah forgive us, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and because I love Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, or I love Jesus, then I would not be accountable for anything. I'll just go blank check to the Jannah. ये अकायद की खराबी है. When we do these kinds of things, we are no longer in just amali nifaq. We are actually in i'tiqadi nifaq because our aqidah changed. And this is where the importance of these things are, and this is where the importance of this hadith is. We need to understand what this nifaq is and who is a true munafiq and what is the very thin line between amli nifaq and the i'tiqadi nifaq. We need to know this and we need to teach our children this. Nifaq of any kind is dangerous because one may lead to other. If it doesn't start from the first one, it will lead to other eventually. And your iman is endangered. Our children's iman is endangered. And सबसे बड़ा आजकल का खतरा यही है कि ईमान न चला जाए. The major danger of today, the major fear of today is losing your iman. And this is what this hadith and this teaching of Rasulullah is all about. Questions? Find who I'm going to go to ask for forgiveness. It's a permanent burden on my head in the Day of Judgment. But they were able to behave like this because they were conscientious of these things. Their belief that I will be held accountable was so strong that it could not be moved. तो हमारा प्रॉब्लम ये है कि हमारा ये ईमान कमजोर हो गया है. Our iman is weakened, our aqaid are weakened, and we find excuses to behave the way we want. But like Anwar Saab said, and I say it all the time, the whole purpose of this is not to just listen to a lecture or say, wow, this was very good, but to self-reflect. Am I involved? Am I engaging in this behavior? Is my wife, my husband, my children engaging in this behavior? And if you are honest with yourself and you say, yes, I am, first of all, make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ask Allah's forgiveness. Make tawbah to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And ask Him to give you the tawfiq and the guidance to stop it, and the courage and strength to stop it. And then try. If we hear all of these things, and if we don't even try, then it's a waste of time. And that's the whole purpose, bhai. Allah Ta'ala, may Allah give us the wisdom and the strength to learn and understand what Allah expects from us, what Allah's guidance and the Prophet's guidance expect from us in our daily life. And may He give us the strength and wisdom to live by it and be mindful of it. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi. سبحان ربنا علينا على الوهاب ربنا ظلمنا أنفسنا وإن لم تغفر لنا وترحمنا لنكونن من الخاسرين لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين لا إله إلا أنت سبحانك إنا كنا من الظالمين ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار وقنا عذاب القبر وقنا عذاب الحشر وقنا عذاب الميزان ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب اللهم حبب إلينا الإيمان وزينه في قلوبنا وكره إلينا الكفر والفسوق والعصيان واجعلنا من الراشدين اللهم توفنا مسلمين والحقنا بالصالحين غير خزايا ولا مفتونين ربنا اغفر لي ولوالدي رب ارحمهما كما ربياني صغيرا اللهم اغفر لأمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم ارحم أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم أصلح أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم تجاوز عن أمة محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم اللهم فازهم اللهم انصرهم في كل مكان من كل سوء يا الله اللهم إنا نسألك من خير ما سألك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم ونعوذ بك من شر ما استعاذك منه نبيك وحبيبك محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنت المستعان ولك البلاغ ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم وصلى الله تعالى على خير خلقه محمد وعلى آله أجمعين برحمتك يا